Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey everybody, welcome to Paranormal Karen. This week I'm so excited about the show. Also, you guys on past episodes are so good. I'm getting so many emails, people picking out EVPs and making me know that my apartment is haunted. I truly appreciate that because I can't hear anything. I have some comedy dates coming up for you, but right now the only one that I think is in front of me is Waco, Texas in June. Let me check that real quick because I'm so far ahead on my tapings. And June 4 through 6, I'll be in Waco, Texas. Also, everybody, I always forget to say I do tarot readings. If you want a tarot reading, go to my website, paranormalkaren.com or karenrontowski.com. Today, all about Mothman. I'm so excited. My guest is Tobias Wayland. I stalked him through Facebook. The new book is called, you have so much Mothman stuff, Tobias. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So, the Lake Michigan Mothman. Now, first of all, let's get into how you got started in the paranormal field, or should I say, cryptozoology field. What was your introduction to the paranormal?
Well, it was a series of paranormal events when I was a kid that, frankly, never really ended. And it was a bizarre sort of combination of nighttime visitation, shadow people, and some elements of alien abduction, almost, really. And so, it was very difficult to sort of pigeonhole my experiences into one aspect of the paranormal. And when I was a kid, of course, there was no internet or anything, and didn't really have very many people I could talk to about it. So I would go down to the library. I would literally ride my bike down to the library, and I would find books by people like Lauren Coleman and John Keel and Brad Steiger, Whitley Strieber, all of these different authors who would write about the experiences of themselves, but also other people. And so many of the experiences were similar to my own, that I really felt like suddenly I wasn't quite so alone anymore. And, when I reached adulthood, I decided that, I wanted to give back. I wanted to be able to do for other people what these authors and investigators and researchers had done for me. And so that's when I started investigating. And here I am.
What a great way to say that. I love that, how you were saying that you wanted to help other people because, I'm in show business. So to be a little on the fringes or a little wacky, no one blinks an eye. But I forget there's people out there with real lives that can't say to their family, hey, I think I was abducted last night. So I really appreciate even the way you presented that. You're quite a bit younger than me, but I know all we had were the Time Life books of the the Unexplained, and
I remember those.
Yes, and I remember being laughed at for even having them. And I have just always been a believer. I don't even know if I had as many experiences, but like I came in this world believing. And I remember when someone laughed at me because I had that book, and I was like, what's wrong with you? Like you don't believe this? What could possibly be wrong with you? And another wonderful thing, your wife is your team sort of, she works as the artistic director, and you guys work as a team. That's fantastic.
It's the absolute best. This industry has its share of pitfalls, but I found, of course I can trust Emily. And so I couldn't ask for anybody better to work for or with or just have on my team, frankly.
Right. And what is her, it looks like you have her as artistic director. Is that what she, like her job is? She works in that field anyways, does photography and video, or did you guys just band together to do this?
Well, so her background is she has two degrees. One's from the University of Wisconsin Green Bay, and that is in photography fine arts. And then her other degree is in design, and that's from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And so her background professionally and in her education is photography and graphic design. And so she had an interest in this stuff, maybe not on the same level as me, but she's certainly getting there now. And so my own background is in English and writing. And so we found ourselves, after we had met and started dating, pretty uniquely, I guess, qualified to come together and do something like the Singular Freudian Society. We're like, wow, like I'm a writer and you're a graphic designer, photographer. Like, we literally could just, between the two of us, do all of this. We don't have to include anybody else. It can just be like our thing, and we can form this community and talk to people, and it's just been great.
Right. The only thing that's missing is like an actual Mothman child. Like if you had an actual Mothman kid, that'd be the trifecta. You couldn't get any better than
Right.
that. And I'm looking at the cover of your book, which people know. They go to my Twitter. I forget, regular folks go to my Twitter or my Facebook, and it says "Wife of Mothman" on it. And I forget. They're like, what is that? But this is the greatest. She did the greatest job on this cover. So it's called the Lake Michigan Mothman is the book. And people know I did a whole episode alone on the Mothman of the Point Pleasant start. We can sort of just skim over that if they didn't hear about it. And basically what's going on is the Mothman is now all over the Midwest.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. Yeah.
And so, for people that don't know, the Mothman was. Can you give them? I don't know if you can do it short, but just sort of a little overview of Point Pleasant. What went on in Point Pleasant? You'll do a better job than I. That's why I tossed it to you.
Well, from 1966 to 1967, there were a series of sightings of an anomalous winged humanoid in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. I was accompanied by various other paranormal phenomena, up to and including UFO sightings, Men in Black, like weird, eerie messages that John Keel wrote about fairly extensively in the Mothman Prophecies, his book on his investigation at that time. And so ultimately, at least according to the popular narrative, these sightings culminated in the tragic collapse of the Silver Bridge back in 1967, just before Christmas time, actually. And yeah, that's what a lot of people think that ended. Frankly, in my own research, I never quite bought the harbinger of doom angle as far as Mothman is concerned. I really feel like that Silver Bridge was pretty coincidental, actually. I mean, it's a tragic event, and nobody would ever argue otherwise. But at that time, it seems like it was something of a coincidence. I mean, Keel talks about how he had received these, weird messages and stuff, and so he was expecting some sort of disaster to hit, and he thought that would probably be a widespread blackout on the East Coast. And so he had gone home, and he wasn't even in Point Pleasant when this happened. And then the Silver Bridge tragedy occurred, and at that point he sort of revised his opinion to say, oh, well, it must have been this all along. But there really isn't any evidence to support that. My personal opinion is, there's really nothing people love more than a neat, tidy narrative. And what the Silver Bridge collapse did for the Mothman story was give their narrative an ending. I mean, suddenly you had a beginning, middle, and end. and they were able to provide some context, not just for the sightings, but maybe for this otherwise completely senseless tragedy. And so that's that's been the story ever since.
And by the way, you did a fantastic job with that. And when you started with 1966 to 67, I was like, oh, see, I would have screwed up the dates already because I have to have notes in front of me. And anyone that wants to listen to my first episode on this, it is episode 36. But exactly what you described, and this is what I kind of see. I feel like some sort of weird portal opened up. And for people that know like the cryptoid stuff or the paranormal stuff, it was just no rhyme or reason. Exactly what you said. We've got a weird Mothman kind of around and people are seeing him. Then we got some UFOs and some, what are those the little men in black? It was just this crazy time. And then they had this tragedy and people, I'm with you. I don't know that I think the Mothman is the omen of bad news. I think, but here's another interesting question before we get to what's going on in, it seems like a lot of Illinois, but they're having, Mothman sightings all over the Midwest, aren't they?
Yeah, it's actually all around Lake Michigan, which is why I ended up calling it the Lake Michigan Mothman. I don't know that there's anything particularly special about Lake Michigan itself, other than that it really was a very convenient geographic point that I could just point people to and say, well, most of the sightings that we're getting are within a 200-mile radius of this Great Lake, which honestly, like, that area is already known for anomalous activity. Like Lake Michigan has been known for UFO sightings, especially for years and years. So, but yeah, it's every state bordering it. So we've got reports from Illinois, most famously because of all of the Chicago stuff. But we've got sightings in Michigan, Wisconsin, Indiana, just all of them.
Now, also, not to jump too far, but is the Dog Man also in that area?
No, I have heard reports, certainly. So, southern Wisconsin, like southeastern Wisconsin, pretty famously is known for the Bray Road Beast. And so there are Dogman sightings in that area. So, think sort of like south of Milwaukee, like just that southeastern corridor. So you've got just a string of small towns there, like Elkhorn, Eagle. There is the southern unit of the Kettle Moraine State Forest, which is actually known for not just Dogman, but also Bigfoot and anomalous orbs of light and all kinds of weirdness. And then, of course, again in Michigan, like they're known for Dogman sightings. So there's no shortage of weirdness around the Great Lakes region, certainly.
That's a great way to put it. Do you think, like, I come from a very tarot, I'm all in, like, I'm not going to masquerade as a skeptic. I don't want to get, obviously there's some level of lying to me that I could go, all right, that doesn't resonate. But, I feel like all of these things are getting closer. Like the veil is getting thinner. Like I don't remember a lot of like you would know better than me. I feel like the Mothman sort of in this area that hasn't been time tested. That seems somewhat new. As for maybe 5 or you know what I mean? Does it seem like 5 or 6 years it's been going on?
Well, here's what's interesting about this investigation. The longer it's been going on, and it really started in the spring of 2017, but the longer it goes on, the more older cases we receive, to the point where now the oldest case that we've had was from a guy named Floyd Hancock, who's actually willing to go on the record, which in and of itself is pretty special because a lot of people want to be anonymous, and I don't blame them for that. But anyway, so his sighting happened all the way back in 1969.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, since then, we've received, dozens of reports prior to when the 2017 flat was starting in spring of that year. And so, what I've found is, you and I and everybody else who travels in our weird circles, like we've heard of Mothman, we're familiar with Point Pleasant, like we know that story. But I mean, most people don't. Most normal people, maybe they're starting to hear of it now because it's becoming pretty popular. But most normal people had never heard of the Mothman, and so what would happen is, they would see this weird thing, whatever it is. They would see this bat or bird-like humanoid with these glowing red eyes. It would scare the crap out of them, and maybe they would go tell a loved one, like a spouse or a close friend or something, get laughed at, which is what usually happens. And then they just assumed they were the only person who had ever seen this thing. And so they never talked about it again until now. Because of the relative popularity of these new sightings, we have all these people coming forward going, wow, I saw this thing back in the late 60s or early 70s or something.
Right.
But I just had no idea that this was even a thing. I thought maybe I was crazy or nobody else had ever seen it, so who would believe me? But now, finally, I can come forward and I have somebody I can talk to about it. So, I mean, I get how it definitely seems like a recent phenomenon, and I thought that at first too. But like I said, the longer this thing goes on, the more of those older cases we receive, and so it seems like nothing ended in 1967. It just kept plugging along, and maybe it shifted a few hundred miles over to the Great Lakes region, but doesn't seem to have gone away.
And I have to add, I know you said, but that it was this thing they didn't know that would scare the crap out of them. I have to say, even knowing what it is, I think it would scare the crap out of me because
True.
I think it's one of those things that just is not. Like we know it, like you said, from knowing the stories or even the Mothman prophecies, which was a really good movie. Even though it sort of condensed and twisted things a little bit, it sort of got the gist of it out. But here's the question. I have not heard, I don't know why I recently heard a story about the dog man, or I was listening to something about it, and it was, I know, it was on there's a new show, These Woods Are Haunted or something. And I'm sure it's show business, so it's a little flashy or made more. But I had never looked that much into the dog man, and it sounds terrifying. I've never heard the Mothman be destructive or scary. Do you have anybody other than the sheer fear of I'm seeing this thing I don't understand where the Mothman attacked or hurt anyone?
Now, I've never received any reports where the Mothman has attacked anyone. What's interesting about these sightings, though, is people report this immense fear, like just this abject terror, and it's so strong that it seems unnatural. You know what I mean?
Okay.
They almost just have no reason to be as afraid as they are. Because I mean, like I said, nobody's getting hurt. They're not being attacked or anything. But oftentimes people will report feeling afraid before they even know this thing is there, and then they see this thing, and then they are overwhelmed, and so it's just this really strange phenomenon, that's part of these sightings where people have this supernatural fear come over them.
Also, yeah. So in other words, it's sort of like there is an omen or a knowing that this is not from, it's like sometimes people see aliens and they're like, and I wasn't afraid because they're positive, but this seems to have that this isn't good around it. And also the eyes, it seems like there's a radiation burn or sometimes that can happen. Has that still been going on?
Now, it's funny. Somebody asked me about that the other day. That what's the word for it? I can't believe I'm blanking on it now. I'll think of it later. But yeah, that eye affliction. Now that was something that Keel had documented from, Mothman witnesses, but also like UFO witnesses. And I don't know exactly when that stopped happening, but it hasn't come up during this investigation really. And also I was investigating UFOs before I ever started any of this. Like that's how I got into investigation. I started working as a field investigator for the Mutual UFO Network, and even back then, this was boy, hold on, this was like probably 12 years ago. Nobody was reporting this conjunctivitis. That's what it's called. Nobody was reporting conjunctivitis along with their UFO sightings or anything anymore. And so, that seems to have faded away. I don't know why. It's just one of those weird things, I guess. But no, I haven't heard anything about it.
That's very interesting that you bring this up. In fact, you know what? Everybody hold on. We'll be right back. I have a story about conjunctivitis. Hang on. We all live busy lives. In fact, when I'm not podcasting, ghost hunting, performing stand-up comedy, or reading tarot for my clients, I'm trying to catch my breath and de-stress. All that on the go can really play havoc with your sleep and impact your health. That's why I'm so crazy about the relaxing benefits of CBD oil. But I care about what I put into my body, so I only look for the best. And that's how I found Zion Medicinals. The company was founded by Brian Caruso, who sought a natural pharmacy-grade solution for his wife's pain and insomnia. Zion Medicinals sources high-quality, healthcare-grade, premium hemp oil direct from an organic farm in Colorado, so you consistently get the best product every single time. The oils are full spectrum too, not CBD isolate, which means that every bottle contains all of the plant's naturally occurring compounds, including cannabinoids, flavonoids, and oils for a superior product. Every bottle is third-party tested to ensure it's pure and potent too. To get your Zen with Zion, check them out online at zionmedicinals.com. Tell them I sent you and use coupon code Karen20 for 20% off your first order. That's capital K, small AREN 20. Tell them Karen sent you. Okay, we're back. So, Tobias, that's interesting that, I thought it was a radiation burn, but did they describe it more as like a pink eye or a conjunctivitis?
John Keel literally calls it conjunctivitis. I remember that specifically. And I think that he says it's related to, radiation or something similar, but that is the actual word that he uses. So I don't know why.
That's interesting. Since I changed my Twitter handle to my wife of Mothman, I've literally had pink eye twice since then.
Well, right. Well, part of me was like, well, okay, so he's describing, people having this conjunctivitis, which I don't know if I think it really all conjunctivitis is like your eye getting irritated, and so it like becomes inflamed.
Oh, okay.
So there are probably different things that can cause that. And one of them is probably like harsh light or radiation or something similar. But it is one of those things where I thought about it and I was like, I should look up and see if people just got pink eye more back in the 60s. And like, it's just something that doesn't go around as often, because it might just be one of those weird coincidences. Who knows?
Well, but, it's interesting too. Yeah, my sister's a teacher, so she seems to think it's around all the time because she's gotten it quite a few times because the kids get it. But the first time I got it in Utah when I was working in Utah. But I'll tell you, it was like it looks so much more than an irritation. Like you can't miss it. Like it is hot pink all the way. It is not any it's not, there aren't, it's not like veins. So it's pretty intense. I thought it was a virus, but that's very interesting. It could just be my husband coming to visit, and boom, I got pink eye. But so we don't have any, I wonder, have you ever thought of Mothman as a shapeshifter? Like he comes in like this and switches into something more dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, I think the potential is there. So much of this seems to exist on the level of consciousness. That I don't know that we even understand what this thing really looks like. Period. I believe it was Keel too who speculated that the actual appearance of these things, if we were to see them, truly, would basically be anomalous glowing orbs like that. Like those orbs people report might be the entities themselves, and then they either project these images of monsters or can make themselves appear, as these things or something. So, because there is that manipulative element to this, I mean, I couldn't possibly rule that out. It wouldn't surprise me at all if these things were capable of looking like whatever they want, frankly.
Yeah, there was, I was reading or listening to a book on the Skinwalker Ranch, and they were talking about two people looking at the same thing. They're looking at lights, they're seeing lights, and one guy had night vision goggles, and he sees, instead of a light, he sees a tunnel, and he sees something come out that tunnel. So it really, like you said, those lights could be this thing that maybe it comes through like that. Have you interviewed, when you interview people, how close have some of them gotten to him in these stories?
Some people report being very close, frankly. I remember talking to a guy in Mukwanago, Wisconsin, and he said what he had seen was, maybe 10 or 12 feet in front of his car. So that's pretty close.
Wow.
Yeah, there are other people who have seen this thing, who have described seeing it, like really so within that distance. So, closer than they're comfortable with, certainly.
And it's what, 6 foot tall, bigger than that?
Descriptions range from between 7 and 9 feet usually.
Wow.
And well, I think that variance is probably largely due to just people's perception. It's difficult to judge heights and wingspan and stuff like that. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe they're all exactly 8 feet tall, and that's just the normal variation that we see, in people's perception. But yeah, it's big. The actual sightings that I think have something to them, the ones that I think are probably the likeliest to be actually paranormal, always describe this thing as 7 to 9 feet tall, and then a wingspan between like 8 to 15, which is a huge that's a huge range. But again, I mean, it's difficult for people to kind of judge sometimes. So,
and again, the old standard where people would say you're looking at an owl, you're looking at a crane, like that doesn't fit out there, does it? What would be the go-to excuse out there?
Well, Sandhill Crane actually do live out here, so that was huge in Point Pleasant, and people hated that explanation because Sandhill Cranes don't really hang out around there. But we actually do get sandhill cranes here, so that would be a popular one. Another one would be great blue herons. And I'm not going to lie, I have investigated some of these reports, and some of the reports we get actually are misidentified birds. They aren't all Mothman, but that's just being a good investigator.
Right.
Honestly, like that's just doing my due diligence, and so there have actually been two different profiles that have emerged, as a result of our research. So on the one hand, you've got these daytime sightings where people see something that they can't identify. It's usually flying. It's pretty far away, and they might be curious or startled, but they're not really terror stricken
Because it's so far away.
Well, and usually because those ones are the ones that end up being misidentified birds.
Oh, okay.
And then on the other hand, we've got these nighttime sightings where people are usually a little closer. They describe this 7 to 9 foot tall, 12-foot wingspan, glowing red eye, flying monster, and they're absolutely terrified. And often they'll see it on the ground, and then maybe it'll take off. And those, I think, are the actual,
Mothman.
paranormal sightings, yeah.
Yeah, and in that, it's also like I always use the. I grew up in a part of Massachusetts where my backyard was the woods, and every once in a while, either you could have a moose come down from Canada or a deer, but there's that moment when you're very close to this animal, and it's almost like the animal didn't hear you, and you didn't hear the animal, and your eyes lock for a second, and it's kind of like, uh-oh. Like who's making what move? There's that fear. Have any of these, like when you say also these nighttime ones, that to me is the fear that you're sort of, it's almost like there's eye contact or a communication, like, oh, he's looking at me, I'm looking at him. That would have to be really the part that's terrorizing. Like the guy that saw it in front of his car. I know they made that movie Jeepers Creepers, which I think that character actually was based on the Mothman, but the guy that you said it was right in front of his car. So what happened there? Was he driving? Was he stopped? Did it land?
Oh. So he was coming home, and on his way home, he was talking to his friend on the phone. Now, at the time, this guy was staying with his parents, and so we pulled into their gravel driveway in Mukwonago, which is a very rural area. He decided that he was just going to pull in back into his normal spot like he always does, but then he was going to stay outside to finish his conversation with his friend because, it was late. He didn't want to go in and wake up his parents and all this. And so he turned the car off, turned the lights off, everything. And he's talking to his friend, and the only light at that point is at the end of their driveway, which is about 50 feet from the hood of his car, was a single lamppost. And so that gave off just enough light for him to notice at a certain point when he looked up that in the ambient light backlit by this lamp, he could see the silhouette of this what looked like a huge person. And so, obviously he's at this point, he wants to know what's going on, and he turns his headlights on. And he sees this thing standing there that he estimated to be about 9 feet tall. And he said that it had this sort of scaly skin. And he said that it looked scaly because it had been misting out all day. And he could see how sort of reflective its skin was as a result of being wet from the mist. And he said he was standing there and had these membranous wings, so these bat-like wings, and it had them crossed over its body like a bat will do when it's hanging upside down. And so as this is happening, then he's telling his friend about it over the telephone. And so he looks at this thing for, the whole thing maybe took 10 or 15 seconds. And he looks at this thing, and it suddenly just seems to blur, and then it's gone.
Wow.
And he's not going to stick around at that point, so he turns the the headlights off and decides that's like now's his chance to make a break for it, and he just hauls ass inside. But yeah, that was his experience, and I'll tell you, it had enough of an effect on this guy where Emily and I went out to talk to him, and it was the middle of the day on like a beautiful Saturday morning at like 10 a.m. and he was still scared. I mean, he was sweating and practically shaking. He was still scared by just talking through his experience and reliving it in that way was enough to scare him all over again. So, whatever happened to him, it had a real effect.
That had an effect on me actually because, and I know maybe it is that I have that visual from that scary movie, but you'd have to feel very frightened when you turned the light on that because that's almost like going, "Hey, I'm over here." But wow, do you have has anybody else had a story like that? That's terrifying.
Sure. Well, I mean, that's been, and I guess I can't say that none of the daytime sightings could possibly be paranormal, but, yeah, I mean, there have been other of these paranormal sightings at night where people have seen something, pretty close. As far as just outright terror, though, like one of the ones that stuck out to me, this actually happened all the way back in the 70s. And so I was contacted by a woman who wanted to share her dad's story, actually. And so this was back in 1976. And it was in it's a suburb, really, north of Chicago. It's called Waukegan, and her dad used to work at, I believe it was overnight in a hospital. Let me see. Yep, yeah. So sorry, I just pulled the story up because I don't want to butcher it.
Right.
So yeah, her dad worked nights at Victory Memorial Hospital, and again, it was back in 1976, and so one night after work, he was going out to help his friend who had car trouble, and so he pulls into this parking lot and gets his jumper cables out. The guy's got a dead battery, and as he's doing that, he suddenly feels afraid. At this point, nothing weird has happened, but it's one of those, like, the hair on the back of his neck goes up, and he's just afraid for seemingly no reason. And so he starts looking around, and he sees on top of this silo nearby, was about 3 stories high, and he sees this black winged figure crouched on top of it, watching him, and he sees that it has these glowing red eyes. And when he sees this thing, he immediately sensed this presence of evil, and that's something that people have reported over and over again at this point. I've had one other witness describe it as a palpable sense of evil, but yeah, over and over again, people will say, "I was terrified, and I just felt like it was evil. I felt this sense of evil," and so he felt that. And at that point, like, neither one of these guys is interested in sticking around. They'll come back tomorrow and take care of the guy's car. It's not going anywhere. So they hop into her dad's car and they take off, and they hear this swooshing sound. And then they say that it seemed like something seemed to hit and slide across the top of the car.
Ugh.
And so the next day, he goes and checks, and she sees this herself, because at that time she was a teenager, and there are these scratches. Like, sure enough, there are these scratches along the roof of his car. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess if you consider how close it would have had to have been to scratch the roof of the car like that, yeah, that's another pretty close call.
Wow. Yeah. And it's funny now when you're talking about that. I know that feeling that I've only had it once where I really was that evil, but it's just fascinating that it never attacks. Like it just watches, doesn't it? Did I lose you?
Oh, no,
Yeah.
sorry,
Oh.
I couldn't hear you.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. It's really fascinating to me that Mothman never attacks, or I guess we don't know if there's maybe he never misses, but I feel like it's almost like he's like a watcher.
Yeah, it is so weird because even that 1976 encounter. Now, I mean, somebody might say, "Oh, well, it's seeing the hostile, like it attacked their car," but you have to believe if this thing was watching them from the top of this silo and it really wanted to get them, it could have before they got into that car. I mean, it gave them time to get into the car and start leaving, and then went after for some reason.
Yeah.
So,
it almost seems like a game, especially the chasing of the cars and the sort of flying alongside of the cars. It almost feels like it's playing a game.
Because of the fact that everybody seems, so consistently terrified, at this point, I have to consider that fear is the whole point, because that's the consistent outcome is people being scared. I don't know why this thing wants to scare people. I could only guess at its motivation, right? But I mean that's what it's accomplishing. So it feels like that must be what it's set out to do because that's what it's doing.
What if all the Mothmen are like on Facebook and we're actually a game that they play and they get points when they scare us? That's what could be going on. All right, hang on one second, folks. We'll be right back. Psychic medium and buddy of mine, Terry Huberman, is with me today. Terry, you've given me so many great readings and healings, and now you've got everything together in one package. Tell me about that.
I sure do. So this package has energy healings, readings, and coaching.
Coaching, that's the best. And people, they buy the package. You give them coaching once a week?
Yeah, so we meet online once a week, and in between, there's support as well.
And who would this be for?
This is really for folks who are in indecision, needing to get into their intuition because they're blocked or stuck. They need to move forward. And so we explore what the root causes of the problems are.
And helps them get out of their own way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Terrific. And what can they expect from this?
Sure. So moving from anxiousness to confidence, accessing their freedom, joy, and security, and really being in alignment with themselves so they have that clear direction, so they know, aha, this is what I need to do next to reach my goals.
So now there's something that's free so people can talk to you and see if this is for them.
Yeah, absolutely. On my website, terryhuberman.com, there is a page where you can click, and it's the intuitive coaching package, and there is a button there that says schedule a free call. So you go ahead, schedule it, we'll get on a call, and you can learn more about this program, and we'll see if this is a good fit for you or not.
See if there's chemistry.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's an odd date.
terryhuberman.com, TerrieHuberman. I highly recommend it, folks. Okay, so all those, do we have any other, when I remember the Point Pleasant story, there was one story and they talk about the woman that dropped her baby because the Mothman was standing on the porch. She went to walk in and it was sort of the gist of that story was that, no mother, how scared do you have to be that you would drop your baby? And that,
oh, sure.
Yeah, he was standing on the porch. Because I know here, when we have earthquakes, earthquakes here in California, I have this grand vision of me grabbing my dog, knocking things out of the way, and getting out of the house. When actually, sometimes it happens so fast, it's like I'm at the door before I could even think, because it's such a terrorizing thing. So she actually in Point Pleasant, they had those stories of maybe the Mothman looking in the window or being standing right there. I mean, obviously, if he was in that guy's driveway, that one really does give me the creeps more so than ever, because just someone standing in your driveway in the dark that you don't know is bad enough. Never mind a man with a giant wingspan. Have there been any other ones like that where it was on the porch, or it was just standing there, or close to a home?
Yeah, definitely. So let's see. This would have come from Chicago's Little Village neighborhood, and it was a mother and her adult son, actually, and they were at home at the time, and they heard their neighbor's dog barking, and so they were curious as to why, obviously, and so they decide they're going to check it out. So they were in their kitchen, I believe, and let's see here. Let me see if I can find this.
Sure. Yeah, it's funny too. I've heard of while you look for that, I've heard of seeing Mothman on a lamppost. Did any of I don't that seems far away, but again, that is still, you don't want to see a giant winged man on a lamppost. That's not...
Right. No, there was an account of that. I think that was also in Little Village. Okay, sorry. Here we go. So you got this woman and her son, and when was this? This was September 2017. So this was still in the first year of these sightings, and these reports were just rolling in every day. And so they heard their neighbor's dog barking, and like they're standing in their kitchen, and so they go to look out the back door. They turn on the back porch light, and they see this thing that they describe as a monster bat, like spread open its wings in their backyard. Now this lady is so immediately overcome with fear that she just drops, like she faints right to the ground.
Right.
And her son stares out the window at this thing, maybe for a second or two, because it's not there for very long, and it spreads its wings, and it just takes off. And he has his girlfriend draw a sketch of it based on his description, and it's actually like it's in the book, but it's also on our website, and you can find it on Phantoms and Monsters too. That's my friend Ron's website. He's done a lot of good investigation on this case. But so yeah, basically what it is based on this sketch. You've got this humanoid thing with these membranous wings, and then its head is sunk down, really low. Like there's no neck or anything. So you've got just sort of this like mound for a head, and these red eyes that are basically like in its shoulders, upper chest area. And yeah, I mean if that's not what people were describing in Point Pleasant, then I guess we were reading different books, because that's exactly what people were talking about. I mean, that's the description of the Mothman. And yeah, it had, again, this is one of those real close sightings. It had a heck of an effect on them, because I don't know if you can imagine seeing something like that in your backyard. Like they probably expected to find maybe a stray dog or a raccoon or something that this dog is barking at, but to turn on your porch light and find something like that.
You
It
know,
is a whole other.
it is. That's the nightmare. Is that you're gonna? That's like a horror movie. You're gonna turn on the lights and there's something that big out there, and yeah, like I say, it's not really in our consciousness, or it's in ours because we kind of read about this stuff, but it's just even I'm on your website and I'm looking. There's actually a drawing, and I don't know if this was the one you were talking about, but it's from 2006, where it's in Bensonville, Illinois, and I think that even if that is just a picture that someone drew for the article, not the girlfriend, it's a pretty intimidating looking thing. It just is. It just is crazy. Which, by the way, your website is fantastic. You have
Okay.
a different article here from February 10th. Witness reports person picked up by a UFO over O'Hare International Airport. What, not to jump topics, but what happened there?
Oh, but, right. So, well, this is something that has also been happening more and more. So, in the same areas that we're getting these flying humanoid reports, people are also reporting all kinds of weird stuff. You know, UFOs, pterosaurs, shadow people. I mean, just all sorts of weirdness. So this report came into my friend Manuel Navarrete over at UFO Clearinghouse. He's also been working with us as far as the Lake Michigan Mothman stuff. And so he talked to this witness who told him that he worked at O'Hare. And by the way, so we still get these weird Mothman reports. A lot of them right now, like the most active sighting area is in the vicinity of O'Hare for some reason. So we've had sightings on the actual like grounds of the airport itself, but also in the neighborhoods surrounding it. So you've got like villages that are right adjacent to O'Hare. So like Bensonville is one, Rosemont is one, and we've got sightings coming out of there. But anyway, so this guy was or is an employee at O'Hare, and he was out on a smoke break, and he said that he saw this egg-shaped UFO, egg-shaped object that was, unidentified and flying, pass over him. You know, and he said that it was silent but extremely bright, and as it passed overhead, it's shooting this shaft of light coming from it, like to the ground. And he said it was moving really fast, but then it stopped suddenly above this old cemetery, and it shoots this brilliant blue light, and he sees something get picked up into the craft. And now he thinks that it was, humanoid shaped. Like, he couldn't see if it was a human being or whatever, but it by its silhouette, he could tell that it was like humanoid, whatever was getting picked up into the craft. But that was it. I mean, it just rotated in place for a few seconds and then flew up and was gone.
Wow. So so he saw a person get pulled up, or like a Mothman type thing, or he couldn't tell?
He's not sure. Yeah, I mean, all he could tell was that it was humanoid shaped. So, I mean, could have been a human, it could have been a Bigfoot for all I know, but it was the same shape as a person.
So now, I know as a good investigator, opinion is not always the best thing, but what do you have an opinion on what Mothman is doing here?
As far as what it's doing here,
or
well,
its purpose?
Sure. Well, I don't know that I've made a solid determination, but, in the same vein as what I was talking about before, I really do feel that whatever its purpose is, fear plays a strong role in that, and that's got to be linked somehow to this sense of evil that people feel coming off of it. And so I don't know if that's all just sort of a deliberate, staging where it wants to scare people for some reason. I don't know if the fear is just a byproduct of its nature or something. But yeah, I mean, as far as I can tell, that's the most prominent feature of these sightings, and it certainly, if it isn't the purpose itself, it must speak to the actual purpose.
It's to frighten everybody.
Right.
Interesting. And again, it never travels without other stuff. It's always a very active area. It's interesting how sort of ballsy it even was in Point Pleasant, where it almost didn't sound like it was being hidden. It sounded like it was just like, yeah, I'm here. I remember on one of the movies, they had a story about a guy where they went into the TNT area to one of the old buildings, and it wobbled right up to them. So it doesn't seem like anything that's trying to hide itself. It kind of seems like it's right there. And it's interesting around airplanes. Have you had any pilots report seeing it?
That we have not. As far as I know, like there haven't been any pilots or anything that, have seen it. Certainly nobody's reported seeing it while flying or anything like that. And who knows why, frankly. Maybe it just doesn't fly that high of an altitude. I just don't know.
Or I can imagine a pilot might lose their job for that one.
There's that too. Yeah, I mean, seeing UFOs is bad enough, but yeah, I'm certain you would be grounded pretty quickly if you started, reporting often.
I don't mean to laugh at that, but that is kind of funny.
No, it is.
Right, yeah, we all got pink eye from a flying bat. Yeah, I don't think you can fly tomorrow. I think why don't you have a day? Why don't you have a day? Wow. And there's no rhyme or reason to who either. It doesn't seem picky at all. What have been some of the sightings in Chicago, in the city? Like, have there been, I can only remember the one, which by the way, that is the best email, is Phantoms and Monsters. That guy does a great job on that. And I remember that's where I first started seeing the information. But have there been a sighting where it's been more than one? Like he comes out on a busy street or traffic stops or anything that big?
Yeah, well, there have been people who have reported being in small groups seeing it. So, for instance, like couples, for whatever reason, have reported seeing this thing. Like there was a couple who reported they were sitting in a car in Petrowski Park, which is in Little Village, and they saw this thing. Other people, as far as like a small group, there have been people who have been, driving who have reported seeing it. But no, not generally large groups of people. Usually we're talking about at most, 2 or 3. Now there have been, and I should qualify that. As far as what I think are the, likeliest to be the sort of true paranormal sightings, those are in very small groups, 2 or 3. There have been cases, one notably actually that absolutely did turn out to be a large bird because we have a video of it. There was a guy in spring of 2018, and he was bicycling to work, and he had a GoPro camera on his bicycle helmet. And so he's biking to work, and he sees this couple on the street corner, and the gentleman is pointing up at something in the sky, and there's a woman with him, and she's looking at it, and so that gets his attention, and he looks up, and he sees this huge thing flying overhead, and he thought at first it was a giant bat, or maybe it could be like a man in a wingsuit or something, and so he decided that, he was going to video this thing, because he's got the GoPro camera on his helmet, so he's following it with his bike a little bit, and gets as much footage as he can before he just absolutely has to go to work. And he was very, forthcoming as far as the video and everything. So he sent us a copy of the video, and I interviewed him, and I know Lon spoke to him, and he seemed very authentic as far as his experience. But, we got this video and we got some stills out of it. And I mean, sure enough, it was a bird. It absolutely was. I would guess a great blue heron, based on its silhouette. But most of the time, it seems like the cases where it's just sort of broad daylight and a bunch of people are seeing it all at the same time. That almost, well, in this case, it certainly turned out to 100% be a bird. And a lot of those other cases fit the profile of a misidentified bird. So yeah, most of I think, highest likelihood paranormal sightings, you've got a single witness, maybe two.
Wow. And it just, so it's not stopping traffic. It's not on the freeway stopping traffic. That's just,
right.
It's just fascinating. And I know this is a weird leap, but did anybody have any, because I'm with you on that. It seems like, I feel like it's watching us for some reason, or it's watching us to report to someone else. Maybe it's a machine that is watching for UFOs or something. There has been no consistent after thing, like we all had bad luck after, or it's just fear and then it's over. There's no consistent after thing happening.
Not that I can tell. Most of these sightings seem almost accidental in a way. They're almost all these interrupted journeys. Where literally people will just be out going about their business and they run into this thing. It's not like living in a haunted house or being abducted by aliens or something. It's just literally people going about their business and then suddenly mothman. And the after effect, the only after effect that I can tell is people being afraid. I mean, again, that's the common denominator there. Otherwise, yeah, there doesn't seem to be any other lasting effect at all, honestly.
Right. Interesting. Fascinating. Well, I have a feeling you're not going to have any shortage of books to write the way this sort of phenomenon is. It seems like it's starting again. That's how I know you said it's been going on a while, or maybe we're just seeing it again for a new thing, but it's just endlessly fascinating. This is really my favorite crypto, almost maybe he's just lost. He's trying to find himself and he's scaring people away by mistake. I don't know, but it's one of these, this is one of those mysteries. Like, at least with UFOs, you meet people that were abducted. There seems to be an agenda. We can put some pieces together, but boy, this one just hangs there with like, no, what if he's the idiot of the cryptoids? And they're just like, no, just go stand there. Just go scare people.
Maybe there is no point. Yeah, I mean, I have to consider all of that,
Yeah. Well, Tobias, thanks so much for coming on. Tell everybody where they can find you. It's singular14.com. We're going to have that in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. So check us out at singular14.com. That's where you can keep up with the Singular 40 Society and all of our goings on. Otherwise, you can follow us on social media. We're on everything that, people in their 30s and early 40s know about. So Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, you can find us on all of that. If you're interested in the book, you can find a link to purchase the book on our website at singular14.com/books, or you can just type Lake Michigan Mothman into the Amazon search bar. That'll get you to. That'll get you there too. And if you are interested in being a part of what we do, then I very much encourage you to check out patreon.com/singular40, and you can, really see what goes on behind the scenes, and exclusive investigation footage and podcasts and all of that fun stuff too. Also, if you want to see a documentary about this, we are currently working with Seth Breedlove over at Small Town Monsters to make that happen.
Oh, I can't wait.
If you want, Seth is great, and I love their work, so I'm excited about it. And anybody who wants to contribute to that, there is still time to take part in the Small Town Monsters 2020 Kickstarter, and they get you all kinds of cool stuff for all, oh God, I don't even know, 4 or 5 of their productions they have coming out this year. I mean, they're the busiest production company in the world.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that doesn't, if you back that Kickstarter, it doesn't just get you like Michigan Mothman, it gets you a ton of different stuff. They're doing On the Trail of UFOs. They've got stuff on the Bell Witch coming out, just a ton of really cool stuff. So
wow.
I encourage everybody to check that out on Kickstarter too.
Yeah, and I know I have a listener out there that me and my sister, we do episodes where we read listener mail, and I know we have one guy out there that had a Mothman sighting, which was a very interesting one because he seemed to have fallen out of a tree. Like he was perched and watching them, and he seemed to have fallen, which it doesn't sound like we see Mothman make a lot of mistakes. So if you're out there, my friend, yeah, reach out to Wayland and tell him your story. I'll see if I can find it too.
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah,
that would be fantastic.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Wayland, and everybody. Thank you for listening. If you can give me a review wherever you are, 5 stars or whatever happens there. I forget I do tarot readings, and sign up for my email. I don't send out a lot. If you go to karenrontowski.com or paranormalkaren.com, you can sign up for my email list, and I'll let you know when I'm doing comedy dates near you. Thanks to Mike Flynn at Uno Rising Media, and everybody have a great day. Watch your driveway for the Mothman.